Good. Good afternoon once again, and we are all welcome to another session here of our webinar. And this is the Nigerian Institute of Engineers, London, UK branch. My name is Theo Bosun Odulami, and you're welcome to our season webinar for the month of July. Last day of the month of July. It's quite exciting to know that we are ushering in the 8th month of the year. And not only are we ushering the 8th month of the year just like that, we are putting a lot of misery and situations, good, bad, and ugly, behind us with the opening up of social life all over the place. And yeah, definitely, I think we believe that, yes, we are doing the right thing. And as we go on, definitely, we just have to be very careful and take further precaution. But I just want to reiterate here, maybe looking at it from health and safety point of view, the government has done the best they can do by providing all the facilities. Just earlier on, I was talking to our speaker for today that TFL has really done their best and stuff like that. But the awareness for health and safety is now going to be a personal prerogative. So it's now your own personal responsibility to take care of yourself. If you the best way or the first way for you to make sure definitely you are there strictly to health and safety requirements. If you need to wear your mask in a crowded area like the buses or maybe the trains, please do so. It's not only for your own safety, it's also for the safety of other people. And also, if you need to quarantine, well, definitely give it a very good thought. We don't want to endanger other people's lives regarding that. And just still talking about health and safety, I would like to remind us that this summer is a double whammy for us. We have the sun, and at the same time, definitely, we have the receding pandemic. So we need to make sure definitely we prepare ourselves for the sun as well. We don't want to forget that. If you know you have to go out on a sunny day, get a bottle of water with you. Make sure you exercise, and when you exercise, make sure you are well protected from the sun. Some of us have been sitting down at home for a very long time. Don't just go straight on the street and start exercising. Maybe you need to stretch your muscles in your garden first of all, for you to, before you start going on the streets, because you don't want to tear a muscle or a ligament doing that. So that is what I have on behalf of health and safety. Also, can you see my screen? Can we all see my screen, please?
Yes.
Thank you very much. So this is the big thing that we have here coming up from us. We've been talking about this for a long time, and we said the last time that we've been doing a lot of talk, jaw, but now we want to begin to put all our talking into practice. We want to put something on ground, something physical for other people to see. And this definitely is so passionate to our hearts. Not only are we doing it for humanity purposes, but also we are doing it for the sake of engineering. We are making sure that definitely that we are handing out the baton of engineering prowess. I mean, we are bringing up new clones of Dr. Pokuola from the way down in Nigeria. You know, we are making sure definitely we build up people and children who are quite intelligent that can take up the mantle of authority in engineering for Nigeria in the next generation. The engineering profession is dwindling at the moment, and even more dwindling in the case of maybe girls or women in engineering. So for us to kill two birds with one stone, we've partnered with Upwind, a very formidable team of professional women engineers in Nigeria, and we've been able to showcase this program, this sponsorship program. And so we're starting on a small scale, testing the waters, looking at how we can sponsor 10 female students in technical education. The package for this sponsorship program is about cradle to grave. We are going to see them through their secondary school, make sure they are well nurtured and prepared for the engineering world. These girls are very brilliant. But if the financial support, the moral support, the environmental awareness support is not there for them, that knowledge will just go down the drain. That knowledge will be wasted. That is where we come in. These girls are very brilliant. We not believe it. And these are the potential women engineers that Nigeria will be praising. They'll be shouting and clamoring for in years to come. So we want to come into their life by facilitating that grace, that opportunity we have by facilitating it in their own lives too. Hence, we have this sponsorship program for the female students. It's going to take place on the 6th of August, on Friday, and we are having it at the Government Technical College in Esie, in Iludu, Kwara State. And it's going to be at 11 a.m. prompt. And we definitely are all invited to join on Zoom. The Zoom ID is there for us to join. And definitely, I want to say, not only are you going to join in and watch this spectacle unfold, I want us to take part in it as well. So we are going to be sending you letters. We're going to be giving you information for funding. This is going to be a minimum of 3 years project. Minimum 3 years project. So that means we are committed to sponsoring these 10 beautiful female students, right, children, for the next 3 years minimum. That's a lot of money. We are giving them quality education, not just mediocre education. So we can see that definitely coming from us, that's going to be fund dependent, and we are looking forward to you making provisions for us. Any widow smart will go a long way. £200, £2,000, £20,000, £200,000, definitely we are not going to say no. So please get that onto your diary. Support this particular credible sponsorship program. It's about humanity. It's about helping the helpless. It's about sponsoring the unknown. And I know definitely there's going to be a lot of reward for that. So without much ado, I'm going to hand over to Dr. Bukola, and he will introduce our speaker, and then we can get on for the seminar webinar for today. Thank you very much. God bless. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you very much, my chairman. Thank you. That's a wonderful introduction to another interesting seminar that we have today. And the program that the chairman have highlighted, please, we need you. I know we're telling you very, very late, but we wanted to surprise you because this is our last seminar in this part of the year. We're going to into recession for August. A lot of people are traveling. A lot of people are doing a lot of things, or staycation, as they call it in the UK. They want to go on holiday, but they're still staying at home. So, so we need your contribution towards this, so that we could continue to support the children. But today is another thing, and it's all about, again, education, not necessarily technical, but education in general. And that's where we have our speaker today, Mr. This is the first time I'm going to call him this name, actually, Mr. Ayodeji Alaka. Normally I just call him Ayo. But today is official. Mr. Ayodeji Alaka is a managing partner of Sanim Design, a very, very well knowledgeable group of people that does design across all kind of things. You know, they could give you a new design for a bottle of water that you wouldn't thinking behind it. So Ayodeji is very passionate advocate and practitioner of human-centered design. It brings the project an open-minded and career experience, spanning multiple grocery, retail, commercial, aviation, education, and international development projects. As a design strategist, people-driven design inform his thinking, enabled by contextual insight. This approach implies a philosophical departure point, effective product or service experience that have developed in collaboration with people of whom they are intended. So you don't just design for anything. You target your audience and you design specifically for them. Ayodeji co-edit and write on medium.com. Is a guest writer for Africa or New Africa, an IC publication product, and wordsonafrica.org, a Royal African Society product. He has been a course module lecturer at Brunei University, where he taught the final years on product and industrial design students in creative method and new product development. He is a guest project tutor at Central St. Martin College of Art and Design, which is also University of Art, London, and that's actually where he graduated. So it's like looking back and going back his graduating background. In terms of other roles that he's done, he's a keynote speaker on so many things. Recently, 2018, at the Nottingham Trent University School of Art and Design Research, he talked about global opportunity for literacy technology on demand. It facilitates a lot of design, African letter. Sorry, that's my phone ringing. I don't know why my phone is ringing. Sorry about that. African Leather and Leather Product Institute and Commonwealth Secretariat London organized multi-stakeholder development program in Addis Ababa, Nairobi, and Kigali, September 2015 to March 2016. Strategy objectives to co-frame design of service and operation strategy for LAAPI's regional design studio. It has sat on many panel discussions, one of them in Nesta Future Fest March in 2005. And the topic was, this is what I don't like about African people. They will call you once, you don't answer, they'll call you again. You turn that phone off. Sorry about that. I'm talking about panel discussion. And where they talk in March, March 2015, what might the world be like in decade to come? That was in Lagos. In other words, looking forward to Lagos 2060. Another panel discussion on African Rising in June 2014, Made in Africa, Transnational Product Development, Value Chain, and then many paper production. I've worked on film with this guy. He's thinking the way he thinks. It baffles me. It comes up with so many things that ordinary people will not come up with. Sometimes I even worry whether it's autistic or not, because autistic people, they really they see things totally different. Anyway, Frame Africa, African Media Center, University of Westminster, 2014, documenting Africa, creating facts and fiction through lenses. Yeah, design thinking approach. But today, and it's taking us a while to get him to this point because he's a very busy person. Today is going to be talking about social impact of design technology education. In other words, comparing how we do it in Nigeria to how we do in the UK, taking the advantage and disadvantage of the two of them and narrating to us. And this webinar is going to be different. It's going to be doing things we haven't done before. So stay with me. So on that note, Mr. Alaka, take it away. You can share your screen now.
Okay. Thank you for having me, Dr. Kukwala and Engineer Odulami and everybody else. And I'd like to say thank you for everybody who's attending. I'm hoping that we're going to take away a lot from this. It's going to be a participatory session. So I would prompt for responses from everybody. And I would, because the idea of social design for social impact, we can't separate it from our value system. So social value of products and services, it very much depends on where the boundaries from where the impact is drawn. For example, when we look at an electric car, it may seem to give carbon neutral journeys, but we forget that actually the environmental impact for that car involves electricity that is used to power it. It has to be produced somewhere. So it's complex. But the first thing I'm going to start with is I'm going to bring up, I'm going to share my screen, and I have just a second. Dr. Popola, can everybody see the screen?
Yeah, we can see your screen, yes.
Okay. So what I'll just give everybody a minute or two to please read that quote. I looked around for a quote that can really give justice to the idea of what social impact means, because we can't separate it again from ethics, our ethics, and ethics could be a very cultural construct. So I'll just leave all of us to read that for a minute and try to find out how that relates to what ethics means to each of us individually. So I'll keep quiet for a minute or two. We have about 10 seconds left. Please feel free to just put up a yes, Y for yes in the chat box if you've completed reading it, and so I'll go to the next item. And this is another piece of exercise, which is, it's a bit of a polling, and a fictitious project, but it's actually based on a real life project I was involved in. And so many of us are in Lagos, some of us are in London. As you can imagine, if you've been asked to come and work on a project, perhaps in this case based in Addis Ababa, with craftspeople that work for a shoe company, haven't been in design school, but they're extremely intelligent, extremely skilled in the crafts of making very, very high quality leather boots, like example in the picture. But in order to work with them, we've been tasked to work with the staff in the factory, where we have to look at items that influence how motivated they are to bring their best to work. Some people might think there's no relationship between motivation and the ability to be creative. There is, in my view. So in any case, I would be very grateful if we could just go through that exercise. There's a polling dialogue box for each of us to enter. It's really a self-reflective question. It's to test our own self-assessment of, for example, how self-aware are we of the possibility that we might go into this situation full of opinions and our perspectives. So we'll just do this, and we can continue doing it throughout the presentation. And at the end of it, I will reconcile it with what we've taken away from what we've listened to. So I'll give us another 5 minutes again, or just about less, to think about this and respond. Dr. Popola, is the poll open?
Not yet. You need to click the button. Yeah.
Okay. I'm looking for it. Oh yeah, got it here. So I'm going to share the poll. So the poll is now open. Just feel free to read the questions as carefully as you can.
I haven't seen it yet. Do you want me to start it?
Okay, thank you, please.
Logging from another device. Oh. He's saying I'm logging for another device. Bosun, would you like to start the poll? It's a button at the bottom that says poll, and there should be something that says reactivate poll.
Okay, I thought I had it open. You can see.
Can anybody see the poll, please? I can see.
I can see it. I've seen it in front of me.
Okay, good.
All right. Okay, so that's fine then.
I can see that it's got about 13 questions.
Five questions.
Five questions, and each question has 10 options. Where one,
yeah, that's fine.
That's correct. Where one is extremely super poor.
Can we get the same answer from somebody else that can see it, because I cannot see it?
Okay, let me.
Okay, if I don't see it, well, Ayo, can you see it?
I can see it.
Okay.
I can see it. I can see it as well.
Engineer Moses, can you see it?
I can see it.
Okay, that's fine.
Yes.
Everybody can see it. That's fine.
Yeah, but the submission button is not working.
Uh-oh.
I was able to see it.
Bosun, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
So if you don't, just log out for a few seconds, 2 minutes.
Okay, no worries.
That's what the problem is.
Yep.
I'll come back in about a minute.
No worries.
Okay.
Sorry about this, guys. Technical glitch. We tested it this morning and it worked perfect. Right. Okay.
Well, I got it to work.
Oh, excellent.
Oh, you did? Okay. All right.
Yeah, it worked for me. I've submitted it already.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Wonderful. Okay.
Excellent.
Anybody else have tried it and works? Let us know.
Excellent. So what we'll do is we're going to go through a couple of projects, 3 projects, in fact. And within those projects, I will try as best as possible to identify how the metrics for which social impact has been used to inspire either product development, brand experience, or services. What I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this poll open towards the end. So I'll go to the 3rd slide now. There's a short video for us to watch. Yeah.
Yeah. Come in. You want sweet corn?
Ayo, you have to enable the volume as well. You can't hear it. It's playing, but I cannot hear it. So the volume button when you start playing needs to come on. So go back.
You need to share the volume as the sound as well as the picture.
Yeah.
Okay, just a second. You hear the sound now?
No.
No.
All right.
I think you go into your settings and then look for where you say screen sharing. It gives you the option to share sound with it as well.
Okay, let's see.
Do you want me to share the copy and play it?
Okay.
Ayo, go into your settings and look at screen sharing. You should give you the option to share screen as well as your sound.
Okay, screen sharing. I think Dr. P is going to do.
Right. Okay. You come off the sharing.
Come out of the sharing and go back into the settings, and then it gives you the option to include sound with your picture.
Okay. Stop share. And let's go back to share again.
Did you click include sound?
I've got I came out and I've gotten back in now.
Yeah, but you have to, there's a thing at the bottom when you select the screen to share, there's a button at the bottom you have to click that says sound, include sound.
Include sound.
Yeah.
Just a second.
So come out again.
Okay.
No, it won't play. Just come out again, Ayo. Come out of sharing again.
All right, I'm out now. Okay. Right. So I'm going to share it again now. New share.
Yeah. So just before you accept the new share, there are two buttons at the bottom of the screen you selected. One of them says share sound, include sound, and the other one says optimize video or something. Don't worry about that one. Include sound. You need to click that button.
Okay, that's a second. So stop video, choose what you recommend. Pause, new share, stop share. Do
you want me to do it for you?
I think I'd appreciate that.
But okay, so just come out of it.
So stop the share.
Can you hear it?
I can hear it.
Okay.
Excellent, Dr. P, thank you.
Okay, so you can go back to sharing now. I've come out. Yeah?
Super, excellent. Okay. Well, what's interesting about that, the video we just watched is it's a shot from a project that I worked on about 3 years ago. And that project was supported by the Commonwealth Secretariat here in London, and a body called Common Market for East and South Africa. But the challenge is that in that part of the continent, leather is to Ethiopia what oil is to Nigeria. However, what they've decided to do with that sector is to build the vertical ecosystem internally rather than having to, because that allows them to begin to create value for export. So they just don't export the commodity. It means that in Ethiopia in particular, the products, leather products will be made and made to a high level for export. But one of the things they quickly realized is that it's much better to work collectively, meaning you have Rwanda, Kenya, there's about 10, 12 countries, Zimbabwe, South Africa, working together, not competitively, but cooperating, but in a way that allows them, what's the phrase now, to have like comparative advantage. And so the question is, what kind of value should we sell to the world? And they quickly settled on social impact, because it really matters within the ecosystem anyway, about job creation, about for women in the job place. And so I'll quickly drill down to what we're looking at. And so when we're thinking about being socially conscious, and that's why we had that little exercise at the beginning, because very often, individually, sometimes we overestimate our own capacity. And sometimes it takes finding ourselves in situations that are unfamiliar, where we would normally, just normal human behavior, project our assumptions on the situation. And sometimes to create value requires a little bit of dialing back on our assumptions. So in this particular case, one of the conversations we were having in terms of social value and what it means for that company. By the way, the company Liberty is joint Ethiopian-Canadian concern. And so the questions they're asking are prioritizing the needs and experience of workers, is saying that if we don't get that right, then the quality of this product may not necessarily be one that will, the end users who are all over distributed across the world may find appealing. And so there's a lot of internal questioning about what it means for equity of rights in the workplace. This company was one of the first companies to set up a system whereby women, because there's lots of women that work in the company, actually get 90 to 120 days maternity leave. And we have to remember that the work they're doing, typically we don't, people that work in the factory floor are not necessarily, in terms of perception, society, even here in the UK, it's just changing gradually. Is that there's a complex around what is expected or perception people have of people that work on the floor, factory floor. And this company says, no, it's not going to be like this. People who work on the factory floor in this company, in Addis Ababa, are going to be upwardly mobile. So we're going to be discussing on a daily basis so that they understand what this product means for our end user groups in Africa, in Northern Europe, in the Far East, care for the environment. So the products are handmade. There's no, in fact, the soles of shoes made in Africa. South Africa is one of the few places that actually uses injection molding. So here, rather than invest in injection molding, the idea is let's focus and invest in the high-end craft capability so that people that work for this company become very, very high in demand. They have high in demand skills. And also to use the opportunity to work closely with Canadian companies to train them to understand research-led design and responsive production capacity. That means when we make things, we don't make the first one is not the right one. We can actually go through 10 iterations, but you have to test it with people. You have to test it with people in Ethiopia, you have to test it with people in Canada, because the cultural references for how shoes are used, what sort of rituals, what type of shoes you wear to work, what type of shoes you wear to semi-formal gatherings. This is why it's important as professionals or creatives to begin to be very aware of our assumptions. And there's also the issue, because to the people in Ethiopia, the concept of life warranty on products was originally strange. But when they were brought together with people who used the products in Canada, in Germany, and where the conversation was had about what it means when I buy this product, it means that if anything goes wrong with it in 3 years, I can send it back to this factory because I trust that with your skills, we can actually either replace the shoe or repair what's wrong with it. So all of that in itself is an education. And we have to remember that Ethiopia, it's just changing now. The concept of design schools, structured education where design thinking is overlapped with understanding social issues, with understanding the politics of workers' rights. That itself is an education. And it's not very often that people can associate a simple product with all of these issues. So it's quite, that relates back to some of the questions that were raised at the beginning. I'm going to go back to a second. Yeah. So thinking carefully about what the needs of workers are and the needs of users are is one dimension. The other dimension is also the social and civic impact of decisions. And so we're looking at the way products are made, because here in the UK, for example, there's now a clamor for understanding how products are made, in what conditions they are made. Were they made in sweatshop factories, and how are they? That kind of transparency is in demand. So you have some brands that are associated with that way of thinking. And so this company is positioned itself in that space. So exactly how you market, even how you market the product, what sort of language you use. And if any customer can trace back to the factory how their product was made. So again, part of the training for workers in the factory, because this training actually, all of a sudden you have people who are working on the factory floor, and because of this kind of conversations, it's transforming their capability and the skills they bring to this industry. And that means gradually can be and as a result, the leather industry sector, and with companies like this, because Ethiopia they now have small, medium-sized companies with labels like Oliberti, this one. There's another one called Soul Rebels. There are quite a number of them. They're small, but they're niche, and they're creating some very, very trendy products. And so in this case, the idea of the value that resides in the product, it's not just the physical product itself, it's what's going on behind the scenes and what's the ecosystem. For example, the rubber comes from Liberia. I don't know whether a lot of us know that Ethiopia is the country in Africa with the largest amount of cow population. And so leather is huge. They see it very differently. So again, talking about the ethics of sustainability. So, if you use, you have to, if you will, look after the animals in a way to ensure that it's just, they're sustainable, you have more of them. And that part is seen as part of the product development process. And that story, the company is not ashamed of it at all. So they're telling that story to raise customer expectations, and to one of the few companies, there are a few of them that gathered together to push the government of Ethiopia to legislate for the type of labor laws that would encourage companies to treat workers in a way that makes the sector attractive as an employment option. And in the meantime, what's happening is a group called the, it's a subsector of the regional body, COMESA, that's the Common Market for East and South Africa. So this subsector is called All Africa Leather and Leather Products Institute. As a matter of fact, they were the ones that initiated this project that I took part in. And so they then decided there was a need to create what is called a regional design studio. The difference with this project, it's not a studio to produce physical products. It's a place for small and medium-sized companies, not the large companies, who are in the leather product space, to access specific kind of capabilities, skills that would provide them with this sort of advisory about these issues, but also provide them with data about trends and allow them a group of people they can test their products with. Now, if you think of the demand side of an ecosystem, of an industry like this, a consumer industry, you would have on the demand side training, education, you would have professionals, social impact designers or engineers on one side. And then you would also have on the supply side. This is where the government comes in. They, in this case, the companies are not asking the government to give them money. They're asking the government and the people responsible for creating regulation to ensure that the space is enabling for all of these things to happen. But also in that space, you also need investors. You also have investors in that space. So one of the things we had to do was map the ecosystem of that looks at all this, if you will, value sets. They have to be metrics in the sense that they can be measured. So if we say that we're looking at labor laws or raising consumer expectations, we have to define what that means. So those are the kind of questions that we looked at. And that was done across a number of countries where we had small and medium-sized players like Oliberti in the room, and we had ministers of industry for over 10 countries. And what they were able to do was have those ministers in the room. You can imagine this, over 6 months, 2 weeks each spread. So they actually devoted to Africa. They take this very seriously. So there was a need to find out how to support these businesses so that the quality of what they're doing is mapped to value sets around what social value means for the product. I'm repeating this again, it's very important. The same company also operates in Canada, operates in Ontario. And so they're having exactly the same kind of conversations with their own workers in the space. For example, they're looking at the humble face mask. And this face mask, the challenge for the basic face mask is split up into 3 parts. But no one up until today has been able to really ensure that this product is 100% biodegradable. There's millions of, that's an underestimate, of these things being thrown around after it's been used, and the rapid use of them is so high that I'm sure some studies being done as to the closed loop, meaning how do you create this so that it's not causing a problem further down the line. This thing happens so fast that you couldn't develop a waste management system to ensure that this thing is biodegradable. But this is a question that Oliberti has decided to ask itself. And so they're having to partner with some really high advanced thinking labs in China, of all places. That's the irony, because this thing is meant to have escaped from some lab, we don't know. But again, so this conversation is beginning to look at how to ensure that this product is cheap, but it meets some eco-sustainable metrics. And the small company, but the beauty of where they're operating from Canada is they can easily reach out to research space, and if necessarily the government, to figure out how they can get it right in Canada. And maybe because they're in North America, it can become something where if they're going to export it, then you have to ensure that it meets the quality assessment assurance metrics of other countries, but also regulatory compliance. And you can imagine the fact that whatever they're doing with this product right now, they can transfer the same thinking to shoes or any product that is made of apparel. Because originally it's a leather product led company. But because of their ability, it's not a lot of putting this thing together, having the component parts, stitching it together. There are also skill sets that are available that can be used for this. That's another takeaway. So we may ask, where is Nigeria in this, or where's the UK? The UK is in this because the Commonwealth Secretariat has invited a couple of people, including myself, to work with this company. And so we're constantly looking at what they're doing and using it as a reference point. I was just saying to Dr. Popola at the beginning of this project, use it as a reference point to have an online lesson with all graduate students in the middle of this week. And that's how it comes. We are looking at how to, because we don't have an infrastructure of design engineering, industrial design, product design, very well structured in Nigeria. However, there is historically, ABU, for example, is one of the only schools that I know that has an industrial design facility. However, it doesn't have an ecosystem necessarily to support it, but it's a start. And maybe the schools of architecture, it's a start. That's so with the Nigerian space, it seems to me, I don't have all the data to support what I'm saying here, but it seems to me like it's a green space, it's a virgin space to begin to question how to use projects that we can learn from, because the leather sector, there's a leather sector in Nigeria as well, to the extent that it operates in an ecosystem that invites different players. To that extent, I'm not certain of. So, well, that's a conversation to be had at another time. The question I have for all of us here is, having just heard what we just discussed, and again, I have to say it's just the tip of the iceberg. When we begin to think about what social conscious design means, it means that the screen there, it's a question, but you'd also notice that you would have some text in light gray. The idea really is just to give all of us a hint of the levels of complexity associated with this theme of social conscious design. Any product or any service, in fact, where anything is made, there's got to be some supply chains. Within that supply chain, there's going to be values. If you, for example, the leather is from Liberia. The rubber for the sole is from Liberia. However, producing rubber, the process itself has to ensure that whatever goes into that process has to be has to meet high quality assurance metrics. Because if the wrong quality of rubber is to us, then we have a problem. And so that's where ethics comes into. Every single part of that value chain has to have its own serious levels of ethics. And so there's because whatever decisions we make, I'm sorry? Yeah, sorry. So whatever decisions we make at every aspect of the value chain really matters. We also have to be conscious of the diversity. So the cultural behavior of those in Italy who love the shoes might be slightly different from the cultural behavior of the people who manufacture it. Hence, the brand has decided to open some small shops in certain countries where they can afford to do. And so when we design, we're designing across ethical, financial, psychological, and cultural metrics of value. So whenever we pick up any product, whether it's packaging for food, if we think carefully about packaging itself, I've got a bottle of water here, whether anybody can see it. So I buy this at Costco, but I buy this particular one because it's cheap at Costco, but also because it's 100% recycled plastic. And I know that this company has an ambition, it's called Smart Water, to ensure that plastics become biodegradable. So as a consumer, I can't afford, if it was sold somewhere else, I probably wouldn't be able to afford it. So I'd have to settle for something else, which also has that ambition. And this is still the same brand, Oliberti, and a way of expanding or getting their narrative out. So the perception that people have of what social value means to the company is by what they do is they reach out to people that share the same values with them. So in this particular case, there's an architect here, Xavier Yalalta, who is very well known in Spain, and he then finds that he has a project in Ethiopia, and a vocational school project. Excuse me a second. So he has a project in Ethiopia and has been invited to come over, and he has to then do, well, not with the same kind of compressed time range that we did for the first set of questions, but he has to learn the hard way that he cannot take the presumptions that he's grown with in Spain and think that when he gets to Addis, that's going to be helpful. So as a result of that project, in Ethiopia, he has become an advocate of what I've used a synthesis of the unfamiliar. And when I say synthesis, I think that's a skill that is so important, the ability to draw from various types of knowledge and skills and people who on the face of it, you would think are not necessary to make things happen. So the ability to just absorb and question and just try, because for me, it's a challenge to listen and learn is something that is very important, particularly if we're developing products across different cultures, different countries. And so that's what he's done. And so Oliberty has a number of people like that they've co-opted to speak on behalf of shared values, in this case, social values, social consciousness, and the impact it would have on what we do, whether it's building, whether it's products, whether it's services. I have a screen here. It's for those of us watching from a laptop, would have to increase the size of the screen. Just a second. I would. Basically what it is ecosystem that I referenced earlier on. And I think this is very important. Very often when people think of designers, they associate designers with just, making things look pretty and visual. It's a way lot more than that. And so in this case, we're looking at, apart from the basic things, material, ability to make things, and the creative thinking. There's also this, like I said, the supply side. How do you create, an education ecosystem that works closely with industry and linkages? So that's media, the kind of conversations we have that actually influences our perception of what design is. It's not necessarily, and there's a lot of perhaps emphasis on sensationalism, which has a place, but where it's about individuals, creative individuals, have its place. But if you're doing things like this, where it's mass product, but it's going to be at a high level quality, you might, yes, you would have some named designers, but I think it's much better from my perspective when the emphasis is on the product and figuring out how to build and develop an ecosystem. It takes a while and it takes years to ensure that you have the supply side, the various linkages, and demand side, public, private, third sector funders. That works very well for that industry. And to the extent where, for example, Ethiopia ecosystem works so well that Chinese, not just Chinese, even German shoe manufacturers are moving shop wholesale. They don't have to they'll bring their people with them, but they know that they won't have to look far to find the skill sets available locally. This is a visual map of what we tried to do with the Regional Design Studio, just to figure out how it might work as a service provider to small, medium-sized product developers in the leather sector. So having the, if you will, the benchmark companies like Oliberty, Soul Rebels in the room was very helpful, because we were able to identify where they had spare capacity. And this is what is interesting, where you have a space or a culture where companies are not afraid to share their capacity with other companies, because they see the big picture, as in what's good for me is good for the rest of the companies that operate in this industry. So Oliberty has spare capacity. And that also, I have to say, goes down to the thinking of the founders and the company's board and their outlook and their value systems. So what they're doing with other companies like them is using their spare capacity to invite other smaller players to learn, to benchmark, to learn certain skills. And that's what they have in place of formal design schools. What's happening now is, as a result of that, what is happening there is quite unique. So design schools here are actually interested in what's happening there. And so you can imagine, you know, a school like Central St. Martin's, like the Royal College of Art, beginning to say, we're going to go to these places to see how they operate, because we want to have, for example, Ravensbourne Design has a master's in designing for social impact, specifically like that. But without this sort of project, they wouldn't know. But what that means is that people who want to specialize in this space then come to these schools, either in the US or here. And the question is, why can't we have that kind of ecosystem? And it's not impossible. Why can't we have that kind of ecosystem in our spaces? And that's going to happen in, definitely, it's something that's going to happen with definitely Rwanda, Ethiopia, and Kenya, because they've seen that space and they know that the Chinese will want to come and learn from that facility as well. And so that's another form, if you will. It may not, another form of inviting investors from us, external investors, for foreign direct investment in that space, and where the revenue stays in those countries. And so that brings me again to this question. Again, the question might seem similar to the previous one, but I'd like us, I'll just give everybody like a minute or so, or less than a minute, to look at what makes this question different. I've deliberately laid it out graphically, so it seems as though it's the same. But if you look at the grayed out spaces, you will see that there's the very slight differences. The first one was about values, and this one's about ecosystems. And so again, how do you think of social issues on the basis of evidence? When we think of presumptions, for example, I'll quickly use an example in Lagos. The people that live in Makoko, actually, I would like to find out what everybody's perception is, but they're not hand in plate begging anybody for money. These people actually run their own small ecosystem of schools, to the extent where there was a project to build a floating school to support that community. That project didn't go very far, only because, again, I don't have the reasons why it didn't go very far. Funny enough, that project is now being tested out in Cape Verde, not very far from where we are. And the evidence to support that project was primarily based on many things, but primarily based on the fact that kids from different families actually have private tutors. They have French teachers coming from neighboring countries to teach. Some of those kids go on in that educational system that is very different from what many, quote unquote, middle class kids, or I'm not even sure whether there's a middle class in the country anymore. Because when we project our own view on other people, it's very difficult to have empathy. And when it's difficult to have empathy, it's near impossible to design for social impact. So that project really did not move off the ground. I think, personally, don't have the facts to support this, just not enough of socially conscious thinking around. We've projected a certain kind of thinking on people that live in Makoko, who, by the way, play a serious role in the furniture ecosystem, at least of Southwest Nigeria. You know, the level of workshopping, the way they use sawdust, it's just astounding. But that's another story for another day. So I thought it's interesting to just leave these questions for us to think about. To another project. So this is a project that I've just recently worked on for a very small family-owned business who have a very limited budget, but they have an ambition that punches way above their resource capability, and rightly so. It's a plant-based product. It's called chewy ginger. It's manufactured in Indonesia, and it's all natural. So there's hardly any there's no processed element in it. And the ambition is to have that packaging 100% recycled. Those two value sets are enough to begin to, I was quite happy meeting them. And when that was a point of a departure point, it was a no-brainer as to how to handle this. And I simply decided to work closely with some A-level students in the school that I teach in. And as a matter of fact, the project, and this is again about social impact on quite a number of levels. So I was working with a young boy who I would call H. He's half Palestinian and half Iraqi. However, he had an accident last year. So he had a case of a minor stroke. And so that meant that the school decided to work closely with, there's a specialist hospital called NHIH in London. And all they do, I mean, the things you learn, all they do is just work closely with people that have had accidents and this sort of brain injuries, but who have the ability with specialist support to get back into the workspace. So we use this project to work with H, where I provide design direction. His classmates, we do something called narrative design on the pack. So it's very story laden because people have to know about what ginger does. We're not scientists or medical doctors, so we didn't want to claim, because ginger has a huge history behind it, very often constructive, but we have to be very careful on packaging to use stories that seem to, you don't want to come across as a medicinal product, which it isn't, but you want to also espouse its values. So the idea of telling those stories, designing around those stories, it's something we worked on with students. So we were able to create, I can't remember how many prototypes now. I think the client is in the audience, but definitely over 15 different prototypes, where we then had, and because of COVID, the beauty of working online now is you can create visual prototypes, then share it on platforms to get feedback, but also you can design the feedback process so that you can get specific responses from people that would be very useful for design. And that feedback then goes back to H and his classmates, and I work with them to design the product. The other thing is so that's one level of social impact. Another level of social impact is this particular business does not have the resource capability to approach supermarkets yet, because when you approach supermarkets, your product has to go at the point of sale at your own financial risks for a period. And if you're a small player with a manufacturer in Indonesia, the idea of having to make, if Tesco wants at any point in time 1,000 units, Waitrose wants 500, you've got to be able to meet this demand. If you can't, that could just stretch you thin. So what they've decided to do is step back a little bit and figure out what they can do across multiple platforms, whether it's Facebook, whether it's Twitter, whether it's LinkedIn, WhatsApp, and Instagram. So again, the design has to consider that. I mean, The product is vegan, and it's huge. You know, the research is that you have 84.5 million posts tagged #vegan on Instagram. So there's space there to, if you will, get that product out. And the product itself has a lot of perceived benefits. So the question is to test which benefits works with what in Nigeria, in Kenya, in Ireland, and to play with that. With digital product development, in this case, you have the ability to just change very quickly, super fast. And that way, people feel that they're buying into a brand that's listening to them. And that's, you can argue that's a form of ethics. Of course, you choose what sort of values are if you will, are in line with your own value system. But one thing that is very common to all the audience they're trying to attract is that it's appealing, they're environmentally aware. The plant-based food matters a lot to them. And that's a big, it's a growing, across the world, it's a growing, everybody knows for all sorts of various reasons. Some medical, you can't get it wrong with plant-based food. So that's an example. That's a very small example. Then I have a third project. And this is a project that my engagement is far removed. I have a colleague who is driving this project. I hope he's in the audience because I will invite him to expand on one aspect. So this is a school in Edo State. It's called the Government Science and Technical College, Benin. And the school was set up in the heydays of Nigeria's oil boom for great reasons. I mean, not great is a very abstract term, but for reasons that have to do with the ability of the country seeing itself as probably further down the line a manufacturing base. And so they had motor vehicle maintenance, metal fabrication, and business and computing studies. But I'll take all of them matter because there's a even catering and hotel management. One can argue that you would need infrastructure and facilities. But the pictures you're seeing here is what my colleague Giles, that's his name, is what they found at the beginning of the project about 4 years ago. And to think that, so this conversation is really to just bring awareness to this thing. So it's not a, it's really to bring awareness. So this is what was found, but the school was going on. So it meant that fabrication or vocational practical learning, because we don't know where the facilities that those kids were using, because what we're looking at were non-functional. So it probably likely meant that that part of what the college offered was not happening. So that's a starting point. And there's more to it. It's a lot more complex than that. And so the idea straight away from the very beginning, and this is just an extrapolation, was again socially conscious learning, to design the experience design, because it's not enough to just build the facility or the infrastructure. We emphasize a lot of infrastructure, but I think we also need to begin to think of designing the learning experience. It's not mutually exclusive of the physical infrastructure, but teachers, educators, and policy makers need to be in the same room, not just at one time, because the life cycle of this project is never ending. Education is not a discrete, doesn't have a discrete life cycle. So the idea that you can begin to invest in, particularly, and that's what this project is about, to target a specific group of families, 18 to 25-year-olds, who live in the local community primarily, and to think of that school as a maker space for wood product systems. It can be other things, but we know that around that part of the country, there's a huge prevalence of raw source of sustainable hard wood. Now, that's another matter. But the point is, it's not impossible, and it's not a dream. It's not a pipe dream to imagine that you could have a system, an ecosystem, again, just like I mentioned earlier, where that raw material, the maker spaces, industry, are part of a demand side, if you will. It's not impossible. So this project is a very small prototypical project. So it started as a rehabilitation of the whole old infrastructure. But on closer inspection, having done an audit of what the curriculum is, by the way, the curriculum apparently is very good. Everything is always good on paper. But the ability of the teachers to have the skill to model, because people learn from modeling, particularly with practical courses. Students need to see it being done, and being done at a high level. The concept of the teacher-centered learning, where the teacher stays in front of the room and then gives instructions, in this particular kind of model, it is outdated. That's just the fact, really, honestly. And so the idea to scale up, to start small, very, very small, and begin to get the children to acquire the furniture craft skills or furniture related craft skills, and to begin to think of how people use these products, to introduce them to end user research. And part of the project, I hope Giles will explain, is also getting the kids to make their own furniture that they would use and have it QA'd to the extent where if, and it will be, I use if as an operative term instead of when, it's good enough, then perhaps it could be tested on for many things. So it's got to be safe, material is going to be, it's going to be properly measured for health and safety reasons. And if they can meet that and many other kind of quality assurance criteria, then it's not impossible to think we can scale up, and these kids and the kids coming through the school system can actually supply other schools. But you start small. And of course, they're using equipment that is real world equipment. So they're not in a space where what they're doing is very different from what's going on in industry. And again, if we now cycle back to the idea of social conscious learning and experience design, this comes into, it's something to think about. And that person there, that's Giles Amazing. This is one of many workshops where one of the things that he has to do is build relationships with teachers, with parents all the time. Because, for example, girls are being veered to go and do catering, hospitality management. And the question is, all right, if girls can do catering, why can't you send boys there? Why should the boys be the ones making the furniture? So there's that kind of need to bring the awareness, but it's not just talking, it's using examples of the kids making things, acquiring the capability to demonstrate to parents and the community that this is not just talk, it's not written down on paper, but it's going to be a lived experience, learning experience. So that's another form of having a social conscience. And this is project-based learning. Dr. P, how am I doing for time?
You're good. Maybe okay. Another 5 minutes.
Wow. Okay. So
you want to explain more?
I will. No, what I'll do is I want to bring in some thoughts from people.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
So, I mean, what we see here is new equipment being brought in, but there's a lot. It's not just equipment; it's also maintenance. So there's a lot of thinking. Maintenance. These are from outside the country, and to what extent do we need to begin to figure out how to make this, to re-engineer this, so that we can make them on a small scale, and to the extent where the need to import parts of them will not go away completely, because it takes a whole ecosystem to get that capability to do this. But at least some fundamental aspects of it could be made locally by the students themselves. And so that then began to form part of the remit of the project team. It's beyond just putting the building in place and living. So the question is, this sort of projects, how can you begin to look at it in terms of an integrated project where you would have interdisciplinary contribution that looks beyond. So whoever is involved with the build is also going to be involved in maintenance, but also have a link to the learning with the teaching staff. And because we don't know the extent to which teacher training or continuous teacher training, particularly for this kind of spaces, for this kind of practical kind of training, how mature it is. In the meantime, there's not a lot of time to wait for that maturity to happen. That maturity needs to be, this process needs to be part of that maturity. Maybe the NTI, National Training Institute, National Teacher Training Institute, would have to work closely with this sort of projects. So I have at the right side of this slide, there's another, I don't know whether we have a poll for this, but if we don't, there's another, it's a very interesting question because of different students' diverse learning styles. Again, that's about how we presume how students learn. We have to remember, and I've only begun to learn this myself, that you have groups of students with different needs. ADHD, special needs, cognitive, different kind of neurological needs. As a matter of fact, it may seem absurd, but it's a fact-based issue. And that's an area that even here in the UK is now beginning to, the understanding of that is a new space. And so you'd have in schools a special unit or special group of specialists, child development psychologists, anthropologists, working with external support. For example, I'm teaching in a school and they're having to use a whole range of departments from Westminster to support the school's ability to ensure that no student is left behind because of their learning styles. You have a student in a class that can't sit still, but this same student produces outstanding music. And you're thinking, okay, I have to be careful not to project my assumptions on this kid's. Yes, this kid's behavior is disrupting the class. What do we do to reconcile their capability, what they're good at, with this knowledge? I am not a trained clinical psychologist, but thankfully, I have the support. So the question really is, how self-aware are we of students' diverse learning style? So we can put responses in the chat. Do we have a little child there somewhere? Yeah. Yeah. Dr. P, are we having responses in the chat box? I'm trying to ask.
No, not yet.
Not yet. So, So the question there really is just for us to think about diverse learning styles. And if anybody, again, is self-awareness, and it's not, we don't have to respond. And here is just a set of pictures. You will notice that this all male. So, and that brings the question, it begs the question about how do we encourage females to be part of this? I mean, the thing is, the more diverse any kind of profession is, the quality of the output is very, if you will, is very curious of the needs of, if you don't have females making things, then you would have men making things that they think women want. You don't have products made for people in parts of the country whose attitude to sitting down is premised on certain things you have to do socially in rituals, then we'll design the wrong product for the audience. So there's a need to bring in a lot more diversity into this sort of further education spaces. And in fact, I'll go as far as university, because these kids, some of them might want to just go back to the world of work. Some of them might even want to say, well, look, I've learned this. I want to be an architect. I want to be a designer. So the last question, or the last reflection really is this. So I'll just stay quiet for a minute, and I'll be very grateful if every one of us could just read this carefully. And so on that note, that's a very quiet reflection. We can open up to, I was hoping that I would have Giles here, but I can't see him on the list. Giles, if you're here, feel free to pop in, but I can't see you, so I can't see Giles. So we can open up for questions from the audience. Be happy to take questions, or we can see the poll.
Well, thank you very much, Ayo. Thank you for this amazing presentation, totally different from what we would normally do, but you've really opened our mind as to how we sort of start thinking about things as a designer, or people that, you know, create things for other people, and to understand how people learn in terms of, you know, special needs, or special needs student and special needs candidate. You know, I also deal with quite a lot of this. We had to go on a training course to be able to learn how to teach people with issues and difficulties that we see differently. Although for them it is normal, that's what they live with. So for them, that's their life. But we need to help them, for them to understand what we're trying to, how we're trying to impact their life. So that's really, really, really amazing. It's opened a lot of thinking going in my head. As a young person, I also went to Tenka school in those days, when the Tenka school were brilliant, you know, and I did furniture craft. And you give me that furniture, I could still make it today, because once you learn how to do it, it stays there up there. But going back to those Tenka school now, we find out, they haven't been kept properly. There's no proper teacher. The students don't get the drive to want to learn or to want to do anything. So those pictures you show there, believe me, I've seen pictures worse than that before. So it's interesting that at those stage, as one of the examples you gave, driving this thing, I wanted to change these things. I was involved in a project when I was in Nigeria 4 or 5 months ago. And it's all about furniture, or, creating furniture for a project. And the wood that we needed, we were thinking of bringing it from the UK or from Eastern Europe. And then somebody said to me, "What are you talking about? Go to Edo. They got the most beautiful, good strength, good grains wood in the whole Nigeria, if not the whole of West Africa." And we did. And the type of wood I saw there, I thought, wow, the cost of sourcing it abroad, transporting it, and then having to pay custom or pay tax before you can get it to is right there. As Yoruba says, what you're looking for in Sokoto is at the pocket of your Sokoto. So we had to commission the guys from Edo State to make all this furniture from this special wood. And they're working on it now. I've seen pictures, they're beautiful. So we have a lot of resources in our country. We just need to enhance and take opportunity of it and use it ourselves, rather than rely on importing all these things all the time. So thank you very much for that. So guys, if anybody have a question, please raise your hand. I can't see any hands at the moment. Raise up your hands and then we'll call you. In the meantime, Ayo, you said that one of the things you said which really touched me is that no student should be left behind because of the learning skill.
That's correct.
Yeah, I don't think our people, maybe in this country, will do that. But in Nigeria, I don't think they will clog up to that yet.
Yeah, I like the word yet.
So what I want to hear from you, how do you think we can persuade, especially the teachers? Because they were the one that will expel the children, and they were the one that will not take care of the children, or they will say, oh, they're always disruptive, so they won't get them involved. I had quite a few years ago, and I proved to the teacher, once you get him engaged, once you keep him concentrate, once you show him how to do things differently, it will be calm. No. By the time we finish his lessons, he will be punching somebody with a biro, he says, with a pen.
Yes.
I said, I can prove you wrong, and I did. So how do you think we can do? What do we need to do to change this narrative?
Okay, this is just a suggestion because it's quite a complex issue. I think you would find very often that it's very often that there are things that some people like to do. One kid would love to play football. That same kid that loves to play football may just not be, on the surface of it, not interested in maths. But we forget that a game of football is a game of numbers. And I'm just using that example. So I'll give you an example. So we were looking at, this is kids in year 8, and we're looking at teaching them how to draw perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
I have an option to go in there and take the teacher-centric approach and begin to draw a vanishing point and all of that. And I think to myself, one, I want this thing to be fun. I want these kids to just love it. So I brought a range of Kellogg's products. By the way, I've taken photographs of them in perspective. Then I brought them to the class. And so you would have kids, and remember, a lot of them are familiar. This is their lived experience. Some of them have it for breakfast, some of them don't. But it's not strange to them. So we can begin to have that conversation around, not obviously, but implicitly around perspective and why it's important if we were going to visualize this. I guess the point I'm saying is each kid has a lived experience with their family, with their friends, and I'm just generalizing. And there's a need to step outside of our own lived experience. And if you will, tap into the kids' lived experience as a form of talking. Why would the same kid who when they get home or when they talk to their parents, their attitude is very different to when they talk to the teacher, or vice versa? So I guess the issue is we need, and this requires a lot of external support for teachers, for any professional who may not have had the luxury, and I call it luxury or privilege, of being put in a completely foreign situation that challenges their thinking to change their outlook. So there's a need for that, if you will, shock to the system. It allows them to see, there's a need for them to see that some kids succeed if you take them out of that environment and you put them in the right environment. The question is, why did they succeed in the other environment and they didn't succeed in that other environment? It's not necessarily because the teachers are not necessarily good, but the teachers also need exposure, either with professional support or physical exposure, where you have, for example, teachers can actually go, for example, there's a school in North London here called Highgate. So they have a project with their local schools, local state schools. They also have a project with a school in southern Uganda. And what they do is the teachers, 2 teachers come a year to come and teach in this school, and 2 teachers a year go from that school to the school in Uganda. Completely, you come back transformed. So that is not the answer that will solve what is a patently critical mass problem, but it's just an idea of what can be done at a small pilot project level. Okay. Does that answer the question?
Yeah, it does. Thank you very much. Yeah, we just have to keep pushing. Let me see if any question, and there's no question in the chat. Anybody raise their hand? Even if it's only a contribution, it doesn't have to be a question. Ladies and gentlemen, please contribution to the discussion at hand. I know it's a bit different from what we normally do. It's not very, very technical. It's about mind, it's about soul, it's about all the things that engineers and architects think about all the time. We think about it and quickly we put number to it and then we get an answer and then we move on. This is actually, jiggling the reasoning, move it around a bit more before you end up throwing
qualitative discussion.
Yeah, that's right. So if you have any comments, I see some big guns here. Dr. Moses, if you're still awake, Shegun Martins, Yemi, please come in and give us some of your thoughts, your contribution to this discussion. My chairman, are you there?
By the way, there's also, I know there's a teacher in the audience here.
Okay.
I am there live and direct. I am there live and direct. Yeah.
Let's have your contribution, chairman.
Thank you for that. I mean, first of all, I want to just thank Ayo for taking his time. Do you prefer being called Ayo or Deji or Ayo Deji? Which one do you want?
Anyone. Ayo's
okay.
Fine.
Okay, thanks, Ayo. And it is Alaka, isn't it?
That's correct, yes.
Yes, but Dr. P was calling it in a funkified name the last time. Anyway, so yeah. Earlier on before we started, you mentioned the fact that, and this is where I'm driving at, you mentioned the fact that you had to retrain. Yeah. You had to retrain as a teacher for this. And that's one of the things you explained it to me, but I want you to more or less kind of maybe throw more light into that. And that is one thing I want us to capture. Dr. P said earlier on about 2 minutes ago that because this kind of lecture is not the streamlined engineering we are used to. It's not the kind of technical details that we engineers are used to. And it's quite good that we have someone like that coming from a different perspective. Yeah. Now, how can you advise we engineers not to always think inside the box, just like that, but to begin to kind of expand our horizon? just like you did, in terms of retraining. In fact, I'm going to even say from your own experience of retraining, how feasible is it for we engineers to really retrain ourselves to capture other dark horizons of knowledge that can be quite, because what you have just said now is very, very useful. You know, I mean, right on the back of what we had last week about human engineering from Dr. Nobolu, you know, so we are beginning to see that we engineers are not about maybe steel, iron, and electrical and concrete and figures and formulas. We're now looking at the fabrics of the society. So how can we adapt ourselves, we engineers, you know, in terms of retraining to capture this? Yeah.
This is just, again, a suggestion. And I'm going to use Transport for London as a reference point. Because if we look at the whole infrastructure, there is a number of lines, you know, Northern Line, and they're all run as semi-independent businesses. They run those lines that run with general managers. And each one, if you really look at the infrastructure as a touch point, an interface with people, with the public,
right?
You begin to look at it differently. So I start my journey. My journey could actually start online. So I'd look. In fact, the journey, whenever I look at that map, which was created ages ago, I started my journey. I'm figuring out where I need to go. That map is a classic example of well thought out visualization, but it's done in a way that has to be super user friendly. And if I then had to think of myself as a design engineer, for example, I have to walk back from the end user. If I start working back from the end user, I come into the hall space. I now have a bank of vending interface to buy my ticket. And the complexity of that ticket buying decision is not, the process has evolved over the years because people make a choice. I can either use cash before COVID, or I can use my card. I can, if I make a mistake, I want to be able to change to go back.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So that discrete process can actually take days and if not, maybe a month of prototyping, reiteration to get right.
Right.
But we need to step outside of our own heads and step into the heads of the people that are going to use it.
Right.
And that then means that we pause the technical assembly of the we think of benefits, and then we walk back from benefits to technical assembly.
Yeah, right.
The same can apply for a vehicle. If we took, for example, a classic one is the new, I can't remember what they call the new sort of pick, ride and drop bicycles. They're red and orange. And so you could drop them anywhere. You don't have to leave them in any kind of prescribed place. But the amount of thought that's gone into having a GPS system, first of all, the rider's finished with it, it's locked. The person who is going to come and steal it would have to take it wholesale, but it's got an RFID system. Wherever you take it to, they're following you.
It to be identified. That's right.
To be identified.
Yeah.
You would have to put in what you need, the value in terms of costs to the value of the distance you want to go. So you say, as soon as you get on it, I'm riding from here to, I'm riding from Trafalgar Square to Waterloo. Instantly tells you how much it's going to cost. So you enter those details. But it's somebody a group of people would have sat down and mapped this thoroughly, and then begin to say, how do we build that in response? You also have, star architects, I call them star architects, and a team of star engineers who, because of quote unquote, they've got a lot of experience of building airports, so they think they know what they have to build anywhere they go. And you build this shiny thing, which is very nice and may work. But you can also say, we've got those skills, but we want to make sure that this is responsive to the needs of Malawi. For example, I went to the airport in Malawi. It's quite old-fashioned. I mean, people still board the plane on the tarmac, but it's not an old airport. So I was thinking, how they do this? Obviously, they don't have troublemakers around here. So there's also the issue of the society where trust has been taken for granted. How do you design around those? So the question, I think, is mapping, and this takes a while, mapping how people behave. Stadium design. Why do we design stadiums in Nigeria to look like stadiums anywhere else?
Obvious answer.
Yeah. Why must it be exactly like the stadium anywhere else? Because when the idea of queuing up is not something that comes naturally. It has to happen under the threat of consequence. If the person
and enforcement.
And enforcement, but that enforcement doesn't apply to somebody who is a minister, How do you design for that behavior? It's if we started from the start and say, we're going to build this thing, this is the behavior. We are not going to change that behavior today. We're not going to change desperate behavior on one level. And we're going to change behavior that abuses power on another level. But how can we design to consider that behavior? It's the question. We don't have an answer, but if we start from that perspective, then
begin to have some solutions to what we have on that.
That's correct.
Yeah, that's right.
If we don't mind prototyping, so you prototype to see what works rather than imagine what works.
Absolutely. And you maybe this is going to be my last contribution or question as it, so I can leave room for other people. You made mention of the fact that you've worked with quite vulnerable people before, and people that have issues, more or less, you know what I mean?
Yes.
And you've had some very good experience in that area. And the Olympics games are now on, and I've been able to watch some snapshots of what of the Paralympics,
Yes.
And I find so intriguing that these people have been given the opportunity of life. Absolutely. Because of conducive atmosphere created for them to excel. And sometimes I was watching I don't know, maybe the past few Olympic snapshots that they have done before, but I was watching one, they were talking about when one of the guys that were throwing the discus. And I bet that definitely this guy, even though he's taking part in the Paralympics, will be able to beat some people who are quite well in that sport.
Absolutely.
But because of that kind of maybe vulnerability. But now let's bring it home to Nigeria. How do you think Nigeria can really cope with that, to give other vulnerable people who have some challenging issues the opportunity to get life? What advice would you want to give the government to put a conducive atmosphere? Because I'm saying something that these guys that we were saying that maybe they have some disability, they may have physical disabilities, but they are ingeniously sound. They've got some stuff in their brains.
Oh, absolutely.
Absolutely. What kind of, from your experience, what kind of knowledge can we transfer to the Nigerian environment on how to manage that?
The first thing I will say is that a possible pathway is a public school system, because a public school system attracts people who won't go to private schools.
Yeah.
And the public school system, if like in Rwanda, I don't know whether you know about this, Rwanda's public school system is set up to outperform, outbeat, and outthink private schools.
Wow.
So that nobody who wants to set up a private school even thinks about it.
Mm. Mm.
But that means that things like accessibility, things like mobility, for example, mobility for children, so that people don't come from very far. You don't have to use the public transport to go from very far.
Mm.
So accessibility, it means that if we just take accessibility, for example, meaning it's not a physical access into the infrastructure. It also means access to how people learn. So if somebody cannot, some kids would prefer not to read. You'll be surprised. They don't want to read publicly. And when we say why, I think we're missing the point. Because why suggest you want to know right now? But you can't know right now, you have to observe.
Absolutely, it takes time, yeah. Yeah.
So to your question, we need to start learning how to observe. We need to start learning to observe without presumptions. We need to also know what we don't, when something is happening and it looks weird. You know, it's weird. And of course, there's sometimes when you have to make a quick decision because maybe it's about safety or danger.
Yes,
but,
yes.
But
then you have to do a risk assessment to see the situation. Exactly.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
So when you have any room where you have 20 students or 10, it's almost a given that they're not learning at the same pace. The progression framework for each child is very different. And then their capabilities are very different. If you then have, let's take a book, for example, and you have a book that is written in text, and you have the same story written in graphics, then you have the story written as a film, and the same story as a theater play. And then have the children interpret those stories and see the rate of learning. For example, it's expensive, but it's not. The point really is how do we need to design different kind of learning experiences, different kind of lesson plans, different kind of, not different, but delivery can be different as well. And then also that's where the training comes. And I think that there's space for, because the concept of a teacher, what's wrong with professionals learning how to, so many things. I think professionals who are in industry need to learn how to become teachers. And teachers also need to come out of teaching to go and work professionally. Because if you're teaching your subject area, if your subject area is geography, and you haven't been involved in understanding the characteristics of a certain part of the country, and sorry?
Yeah, go on, I'm listening.
And how that might impact climate, for example. Then bring that story alive in a way that would make it extremely excitable for young minds, for graduates, for even postgraduates. It's very difficult. I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation about what you watched, what you saw in the Paralympics, is because you saw it.
Absolutely.
You couldn't have an abstract conversation about this in that very defined, definitive way in which you had it. So if we were going to have a Paralympic Games, say for example, in Nigeria, it's something you have to think about it. Which part of Nigeria? Where will we find people who have the empathy, who have the patience
Absolutely. Now, these are the questions I've been asking myself, to really train them to get to that level of competence and to be able to kind of compete, and that's exactly where I'm driving at. So I don't, thank you for that answer, and I'm happy with it. But the point I was driving at is the fact that there are so many Stephen Hawkings in Nigeria, loads of them, people who have that, but
yes.
but yes. Stephen Hawking was able to develop his prowess here in the UK because there was a conducive atmosphere to recognize his talents. And I think this is one of the issues we need to take down to the country in Nigeria, because we are comparing UK and Nigeria now. There are so many untapped, vulnerable people there who can do exploits for the country, even better than able-bodied people like us. So we need to make sure they have such a kind of environment for them to excel as well. And then we see how things can come up. Thank you so much.
I have a question for you, though, quickly. A question.
Yeah, go ahead.
How possible, I don't know how NSE works or the various professional bodies, engineering space work, to have this conversation about this issue we just had, and to say, how can we have a theme around knowledge building and knowledge exchange around this issue?
That is going to be one of the offshoots of this kind of webinar. These are going to be things that we are going to take on board as an aftermath or lesson learned, or maybe kind of communicate from webinars like this. That is why I'm asking probing questions like this that are going to be very practical. When we all come to the table, talking about stakeholders in the country, in the educational system of the country, we're talking about stakeholders, about people that even employability. Like in this country, you don't have to be fully able-bodied before you can get jobs. But can you say that in Nigeria? But I can tell you there are so many deformed people in Nigeria who can do a better job than able-bodied people. But they don't give them the chance, do they? It is when they want to do maybe their whatever publicity stunts, they want to now recognize them and then do whatever they want to do. But I know there are very capable engineers like Stephen Hawking in Nigeria. But because of their vulnerability, because of their circumstances, they'll be more or less kind of pushed to the back burner. So I believe we should start making noise about, let's begin to have a setup for them. Let's have structured people who understand them like you, who can really get the best out of them. And that is, I think that's one of the basis of this webinar, if I'm not so wrong. Yeah, thank you very much. Dr. P, over to you, sir.
Thank you. I was hoping that some guys are greeting us there. Dr. Babalola. We had Engineer KLM Ali, I think he's dropped out. I was just wondering if there's any other.
Engineer Bafemi is there, isn't he?
Engineer Bafemi.
Yeah.
There's also a teacher in the audience here.
What?
Teacher.
Antoinette?
Correct. Yes.
Antoinette is here. Yeah.
We want your contribution to these. Please unmute yourself.
And Dr. Abdul Rashid Babalola is here as well.
You're on the receiving end of this. Antoinette, please speak to us.
Yes, thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh.
It has been so far so good. Very sorry for joining very late, but I must say, the time I remembered, I have to rush out of where I was to quickly join this webinar.
Thank you very much for that, sir.
There's no doubt. Your seminar is such that one would never want to miss it, because you always come up with very apt topic that is of value, especially to us in Nigeria. So I want to thank you so much. I may not have had too much to be able to make some technical contribution, but so far so good. The chairman and our former chairman, you are doing a great job. Please keep it up. May God continue to strengthen you and give you more wisdom and knowledge. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you so much.
I haven't had, so Antoinette has not spoken. Antoinette, are you all right? Do you want to say something? I think she prefers to keep quiet. Yeah.
Hello?
Hello.
Antoinette there?
I can see her. Yeah.
Okay, that's fine.
All right. Okay.
I think I've got some people here, which I don't know if they want to say a word or two. Dr. Moses.
Yes, Chairman.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm good.
Fantastic. What has been your experience? What has been your experience in this kind of inclusive orientation of professionals of diverse vulnerability in the engineering industry?
To be honest, I would have expected the speaker to sort of try to tie it into the engineering profession. I was struggling to know whether he's talking about sustainable development goals, sustainable investing, or circular economy, and the relevance of this topic in the Nigerian environment, how it contrasts with what currently operates in the UK. That didn't quite come out clearly to me.
But what are your views about vulnerability in terms of, well, I know definitely we all operate under equal opportunities.
Yeah.
And that definitely entails even physical and mental disabilities as well, isn't it?
Yeah, but I think you know, when we talk about Nigeria, I think even though I like to be optimistic, I think we also have to recognize that Nigeria is not at the same developmental stage as the UK or say the Western world. And so some of these equal opportunities, like not calling somebody disabled, say somebody is challenged, and the cost to provide this kind of infrastructure that we're talking about, I think it will take a number of years, and for maybe not just Nigeria, maybe I suppose any developing country to be able to afford this stuff. I think, you know, there's a difference between expectation and reality. So I think it will take some reorientation and the society to recognize that disability doesn't mean you are useless.
Absolutely.
But it takes a lot of other things. It takes reorientation. It takes government taking the lead. You know, most people say, "Oh, people obey the law here," because when you break the law here, there's consequence. So I suppose those are also applicable in trying to embed these sort of practices in Nigeria. You know, when Ayo says that in Rwanda, for example, you will think twice before starting
private school.
A private school. That must be because the government takes education very seriously.
Absolutely.
The reverse is the case. The reverse is the case in Nigeria. You don't want to touch a public school in Nigeria. So
exactly.
I think it's more in that particular respect. It's more of like a top-down approach rather than bottom-up. Yeah, I think that's all I have to say for now. I don't know if the speaker has something else to say.
No.
Yeah.
I mean, except to quickly, you mentioned the.
Are you still going?
Sorry?
No, sorry.
Yeah.
Go on.
Well, yeah. Go on.
I was just going to fill the gap. You mentioned that you were expecting, to fill the gap in sustainability. You couldn't quite place. So I guess the emphasis was really on the relationship between socially conscious design, social values, and social impact. And the fact that to get to that point, really, we need a set of ethics, a great set of ethics, and to be able to say, what are we measuring for social consciousness, for example, in a shoe manufacturer, where the capability of the workers has evolved over time for them to become they can make really exquisite shoes. Those shoes, every piece is handcrafted. And that means that there's no hurry to turn that shoe factory into an injection molding facility, because that's where that being handcrafted and the support that each worker gets to have equal pay, to have a union to respond to their needs, to have the ability to rise within that space from being somebody who is stitching parts together to becoming somebody who is thinking creatively about what sort of trends are happening, where and that experience is in place of what would have been a design school, whether it's in the UK, whether it's in Germany. That itself in itself is a demonstration of social impact in action, because that job creation is not just doing the job, there's also motivation to want to come into work, to the extent where this company, the only reason why they've slowed down now is because of what's happened in the last 2 years. It's a place where everybody wants, it's a combination of a learning place, a school, because everybody that goes to work there, all of a sudden, they're in demand across the sector. And I'll then mention the ecosystem. So I guess the point really, in terms of sustainability, if we broaden the concept of sustainability, is how do you have exemplar companies that allow you to begin to think about how the ecosystem of an industry can work, to be a pipeline for training, for investing in that sector, and creating value locally for export. Does that make sense?
Yes, I think it does now. Yeah, I think you brought it on. I think it's looking more to me like the ESG, the social aspect of
That's right.
of sustainability, just not focusing strictly on finance, but concerned about the society.
Yes.
And the environment. Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you for the question. It was very good to and that's why we needed more questions. Just to, yeah.
I don't like being difficult. So.
Oh no, but Dr. Ian, that's exactly the issue though. It's having that critical thinking across the system. Without it, we just can't. If we don't challenge ourselves,
absolutely,
then what's the point?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Before I hand over to Dr. Sunday to finally round up for today's webinar, I just want to crave our indulgence on one of the things that we are doing here in London, and it's something that is very, very important to us, and I believe it's in line with what we are talking about this time around, giving everybody an equal opportunity. You can see, can you see my screen, please?
I can see, yeah.
That's fine, thank you. And that's exactly what we have coming up next week in Nigeria. This is being sponsored by Nigeria Center of Engineers, London, UK branch. And we are working in collaboration with APWEN. I mean, they're supporting us in this area because they've been doing something quite similar for some time. That is, APWEN is the Association of Professional Women in Engineering. And one way or the other, definitely, we are quite young compared to APWEN, but we still want to make an impact. And you can see that definitely we've been able to kind of get things together to this level. And we're talking about the sponsorship of 10 female students through technical education. You know, you can see the pictures of these young, pretty girls and their teacher on the left, right? But you can see just young girls in the rural areas with very little access to the best of technology. That is who they are now. But in my eyes, in the eyes of NSE London UK branch, we see the future Okonjo-Iwealas, given the opportunity for them to excel. But how can they become the Okonjo-Iwealas of next year, of the future, if we don't give them that support, that push, that stimulus for them to get to a very, very solid heights, a very greater heights? These are brilliant children. These are girls who really who have technically sound mind. And their teachers have been able to attest to them that, yes, these guys have got it in them, but they are limited by their environment. They are like a typical adage of the frog inside the cork bottle. They can't really jump out unless they are let loose. And that is why we as UK branch, London UK branch, we are pushing something in to really support them. So we've decided to sponsor these 10 female students over the next 3 years through their secondary studies. And then through the secondary studies, definitely we want to see how good they are, and then we get them straight into university as well, if definitely that is what they want to do. But we want to encourage them that they go through that. And we want to give them that support to go even into engineering as given by their expertise and brain. You know, and that is one thing we want to do. We want to just lay a legacy in their lives. So we're committed to it at least for the next 3 years. So on behalf of the branch and all of us inclusive, we are going to drive this particular program for the next 3 years. And we extend it for the next 10 years again after the 3 years onto their for higher education. Why am I making so much noise about it? Because that's the only way we can give such vulnerable children the Okonji Iweala future for their lives, because they are able to deliver the goods. And so definitely we are partnering with you. We want you to see things the way we see them. So we are going to be knocking on your doors to put some light into the dark areas of these students' life in terms of funding. It's going to cost us money in terms of, we are planning to give them the best of education in Nigeria. We want to give them exactly what, we will not give them exactly what we have here, but we want to make sure they have things that may definitely make them excel in their lives. We want to make sure they have access to books that can really expound their knowledge. And definitely, these girls are tried and trust tested. They know exactly what they want to be in life. They are so excited about it. But it comes down to us. We have been given that opportunity, and where we are here, it's not because we are better off. It's not because we are wiser. It's just because of the grace. And we want to extend that hand of grace to these children. So the program is going to be kicked off on Friday, on the 6th of August. Whether we like it or not, there's enough provision for us to start these children from the next academic year in September. That is 2 months' time. So definitely they are going to be getting their funding started next in September this year, going forward. But then definitely we will need your contribution to keep this project going. We need your contribution in terms of funding to give these girls a reality in engineering. The president of APWEN, Engineer Ojelade, she was on the program. I think she has dropped off. Funlola Ojelade, she's a fellow of the National Center of Engineers, and she has a passion for girls in education, most especially engineering. Dr. Pokbola, our director of publicity, has mentored many female engineers, even on our, and he's even mentoring most of them while doing their doctorate at the moment. So we've got people who have a passion to bring engineers back to the women and the women back to engineering. And this is exactly where I want you to come in. So whatever you have that you want to contribute to this laudable project, is a legacy you are living. You're living a legacy that out of the plenty that you have been given, you are given a little. And you will see what you have sown begin to grow, because we're going to get you informed about what these girls are doing. And maybe once in a while, when they have the opportunity, we can do a live stream from their school for them to have a chat with us in London. How beautiful will that be? So they can see definitely they are not forgotten. Last but not the least, brethren, we in diaspora, this is a very solid pipeline for us to give back to the country. Just like Ayodeji has just said, let's start from something. One drop, another drop, an ocean definitely takes its course. Let's start from something. And this is one solid place for you to start. So we're going to be knocking on your door for funding. Whatever you've got for us, let's have it. Every little help goes a long way. Thank you very much. Over to you, Dr. Popola, if you're there.
Thank you, my chairman. I'm right here.
Go ahead, sir. You can close up, sir.
Everything you're telling me there. Yeah, that brings us to the end of this webinar, and also to the end of a series of webinar that we've covered this year. We've done about which month are we now? July. We must have done at least 14 webinar this year, minimum 14, because there's a month we do per month. So we're going strong. We're doing very well, and for the month of August, we're going to be in recession. No, not recession. We're gonna take time off. Apart from launching our sponsorship of female engineer, we're gonna take time off. People are gonna go on holiday or stay at home and look after themselves, spend some time with their family. So that's what August is for. And then we're gonna hit the ground running come September. So our next webinar is gonna be in September. I cannot remember the date of it. But it will be in September. So we've got one now, 14th. And I think it's going to be on the 11th of September, or either the 4th or 11th. You will hear from us, and we will have a whole series of speakers lined up for you for the next 3-4 months to the end of the year. So, as my chairman said, please, we need your support. Contact us if you want to donate, or if you want to adopt a child, a girl child into Tenka education. Please contact us, and we will try and do our best to take it up. The program, the launch of the program is going to be live on the 6th of August. So the same number and ID that you used to log into this is going to be at 11 o'clock, as shown on the flyer that the chairman shared with us just now. 11 o'clock, and this is not going to be a Nigerian time. This is going to be a proper prompt 11 o'clock start. If not, you have to blame me for that. Yeah, 6th of August. 11 a.m. prompt. If our guest or our father of the day or mother of the day don't turn up, we're going to start the program. Okay? So thank you very, very much, and have a beautiful summer, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you very much, guys. It'd be wonderful for you. I want to say thank you for your staying power, for staying with us till the end. Come on, show your faces, please. Let me see your faces. Architect Olu Akiwande. Antoniette, how are you today? Is Honorable Fatai Alaka. Is that your senior brother or junior brother, sir? Ayo.
That's my big brother.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome, sir.
He's very clued up with his IT. He was the one telling Ayo
very. Very.
Exactly.
And he's not normally shy, so I don't know why I can't see his face.
Don't worry. You know what? You want the little brother to